Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting of the Lake Mills City Council for August 15th, 2023 to order. Misty, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Curler?
Here.
Mr. Waters?
Here.
Mrs. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Quidno?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if everyone would please rise as you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, agenda item 4 is a correction and or acceptance of the City Council regular meeting minutes from August 1st, 2023. I want to thank Mrs. Bishop for running that meeting in my absence. I watched the video. It looked like things went smoothly. So are there any corrections or changes to the minutes?
Looks good.
Okay, hearing none, we'll accept those minutes from August 1st into the public record. Next is correspondence. So I'll start to my far right with Mr. Fields.
Several things, seeing I was absent on vacation last meeting. I did attend a Jefferson County Strategic Planning meeting last month. Several emails. Had one email opposing the heavier truck limits that they're looking to approve. Email on the community center policies that was passed last month. Had one email on the Sandy Beach issues down there with some perceptions of troubles that we're having. And I also received 5 different emails on the tree preservation and looking for ad hoc committee.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Bishop.
Okay, I will just go down the list here. I received a communication about a semi-trailer blocking the right-of-way in the Brookstone subdivision and that safety issue, which looks like it was resolved over the weekend or right after it was brought to my attention. I received a request to view the Summer Ridge apartments from the developer, and I will be doing that tomorrow. I received an email about the community center policy. I received 5 or 6 emails about the preserving the mature trees and a possible ad hoc committee. I received an email about mill pond issues. I received an email just a couple minutes ago, actually, about being requested to speak to a community group. And then I did receive an email also about Sandy Beach problems. I just want to list a few of them that were mentioned because I think it's important. So this is from somebody who's been attending Sandy Beach since the early 70s, and the issues they've noticed have started to occur and become worse in the last couple of years. And those issues, I won't do the email justice as it was very detailed, but include bringing dogs to the beach and bringing them into the swim area, bringing glass bottles, which results in broken pieces, which could harm somebody, people bringing gas and charcoal grills and then dumping coals in the lake, which to me just sounds like a hazard and a danger. People bringing extension cords and running them from the city buildings down out onto the beach and using the electricity that way. Dangerous behavior on the piers, including running and jumping off of the piers and around the boats that are there and the lifts. Kids, this is what is stated. I don't know that it's true, but kids stealing drugs behind some of the boats parked at the fence, and general enforcement issues with people going to the beach and then not paying the required fee. So some of those issues I had been made aware of prior to this. I was not aware that it was as bad as is stated here, but this is not the first time I've heard some of these things, which is why I thought it was important to mention those items specifically as part of the correspondence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bishop, and I think we all received that email from that individual, so I appreciate you summarizing her concerns. Mr. Waters.
Thank you. In addition to the Sandy Beach Park lawlessness and the city tree supporters, I also had someone asking about city code on campers and assessments. So I forwarded that information off to that individual, and hopefully they have what they need. If not, they can reach back out.
Great, thank you. Ms. Quidno.
Aside from what's already been said, because I've received the same correspondence as far as the Sandy Beach, as well as the ad hoc committee, Mr. Waters and I did tour the Summer Ridge Apartments, and so we were able to see what those look like and how they're very well done and very classy. And as a Brookstone resident, I'm really pleased with what I'm seeing there. I'm also glad to see that the work trailer is now gone. So that was a contentious thing, and now that it's gone, it appears that we're towards the end of construction. But besides those things, that was pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. I also wasn't here for the last meeting, so I've got a few weeks' worth of correspondence to summarize, so I won't repeat the things that others have already mentioned, except to say that I will also be touring the Summer Ridge Apartments tomorrow with Mrs. Bishop and Mr. Daly. I received an email from Legendary Lake Mills regarding a proposed entertainment district for downtown Lake Mills. I think they're currently working with city staff to talk about that proposal, so that may come to us in the future. I received some email correspondence regarding a beach advisory at Sandy Beach that occurred last month. Let's see. I received an email with an article about a community in Ohio that's reducing its carbon footprint by incorporating solar into their municipal projects and asking if the city of Lake Mills would be looking into something like that. Let's see. I was copied on some email to staff about repaving part of Circle Drive. Let's see, mature trees, we talked about that. I either received directly or was copied on multiple emails related to the Rock Lake water levels and the dam operations, and I have been attending the Joint Rock Lake Committee meetings where they're working on that issue that the City Council referred to them. They've had a special meeting and a regular meeting in the last month, and I also attended one meeting of the Legendary Lake Mills since the last meeting. And I think that's it. Okay, thank you, everybody. So we'll move on to item 6, which is questions and public comment. So the public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comment may be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you've registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meeting law discourages action by the council on items that are not listed on the agenda. We'll ask that you please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments and fill out the sign-in sheet provided. And I noticed that a few folks have filled out the sign-in sheet ahead of time, so if you want to take one by one and come on up and give your name and address and share your comments with us.
Hi, my name is Mike Heitman. I own a home at 510 College Street. I spoke to you at the August 1st council meeting about the large number of trees that are being removed during road reconstructs. I am here tonight to provide more details on those comments. I am a professional civil engineer with over 25 years of experience in the construction side of municipal work. I have also worked with municipalities who have prioritized the preservation of mature trees during road reconstructs. That direct experience is the focus of my comments this evening. It is a common misconception that design firms set the parameters of any given project. Although there are specific engineer standards that must be followed, the municipality is the one who should be setting the goals for their projects. And in my opinion, one of the goals should include saving as many mature trees as possible. There are many ways to protect our trees during both design and construction phase of a project. Here are some examples. The design engineer can move low points to the roadway away from trees. Also, raising the roadway as little as 1 foot can be the difference between losing or saving a tree. During the design phase, water and sewer laterals can be shifted away from trees. If the location of the laterals are not exact, they can be shifted again during construction. The specifications can also include protection for the tree and root system. such as proper ways for cutting and trimming roots, also fencing around trees. This fencing will keep equipment and materials out from under the tree canopy on the tree lawn. The specifications can outline how a contractor can perform excavation around the tree to find their roots. A vacuum truck or hand digging or other methods can be used to safely remove soil around the major roots. After the roots are exposed, an excavator could be used to remove the remainder of the soil. This is very similar to how we excavate around existing underground utilities, such as gas and electric. In summary, my professional experience has taught me that upgrading roads and utilities and preserving trees can coexist. I ask that our city develop policies such that the ones I have discussed to protect our trees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heitman. Any questions? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Karen Utter Hale, and I live at 517 Tower Street. I've lived in Lake Mills most of my life and birded for nearly that long. I'm concerned about how many trees we've lost in the city, especially in recent years. In 2019, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and others released a report, 3 billion birds lost, a staggering loss of more than 1 out of every 4 birds in North America over the past 50 years. Having watched and studied birds for several decades, I've witnessed this decline personally, both here and elsewhere, and every year I become more alarmed. Some species are thriving: sandhill cranes, wild turkeys, and bald eagles, some that we hadn't seen decades ago at all, but others are in steep decline. There are many reasons for this, the primary one being habitat loss, including trees. Mature trees provide shelter, perches from which to rest or hunt, nest sites, and food, especially insects, which nearly all songbirds need to raise their young. Many birds, such as great horned owls and many of our songbirds, nest in the canopy of large trees and have become scarce. Many others that are cavity nesters have also declined: chickadees, nuthatches, barred owls, wood ducks, and all our woodpeckers, for example. We used to hear barred owls all year, every year from our house, and great horned owls on occasion. Now it's rare to hear them at all. This summer I've heard fewer birds than ever, and for the first time ever in our neighborhood, I haven't heard catbirds, chipping sparrows, or red-eyed vireos, some of our common birds. Some of you remember when we lost all our stately elm trees to Dutch elm disease in the 1960s. Elms were a favorite of Baltimore Orioles. More recently, we've lost numerous large trees to storms, especially the storm that shut the city down maybe 20 years ago. In the past few years, the city has cut dozens, if not hundreds, of trees, including many mature ones, along several of our main streets. Lake Mills is a member of the Wisconsin Public Power Incorporated, our Public Works, and as such, our Public Works Department has done a really great job getting us all to save energy in many ways. A few years ago, we got a rebate for planting a tree that would eventually shade our house and cut down on air conditioning. I think that now, before even more of our mature trees are removed, would be a good time to form an ad hoc committee to develop a plan for our trees that would benefit our city and help address climate change at the same time. With a better tree policy, Lake Mills could be an even better tree city and maybe even could become a bird city. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any
Karen.
questions for Ms. Utterhill? Oh,
Can
Karen,
I ask
can we
a
ask
quick
a question?
Can I ask a quick question? You had mentioned the tree city and then a bird city. Is there such thing as a bird city endorsement for the cities? How does
Yes,
that work?
there is. For the last 10 years or so, there's been a Bird City Wisconsin organization, and over 100 cities, communities in Wisconsin are bird cities. Jefferson and Fort Atkinson are two that are the closest, that are already bird cities. It's not real hard to become one, so it's possible we could.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Lynn Cleghorn. I live at 523 South Main Street, which is on the corner of Main and Milton. So I wish to speak to the project that's coming up next summer on Milton in regards to communications. Having lived through the South Main Street project, the communication went very well. We received letters in the mail. There was a liaison person, Brian Kane, and notes were left on our door as to if dates were changing and what was coming in and out of our yards. And I hope that's the same program you would follow coming to Milton. I have heard that things are a little shaky on College Avenue, so if you could improve upon that, it would mean a lot to the residents. Also, in terms of mature trees and new trees, we have some trees that were planted just 4 years ago by the city, which sound like they're going to be taken down, as well as mature trees. The residents on Milton Avenue would like to know way ahead of time what's going to happen to our trees. It's bad enough what we went through on South Main Street. People don't walk like they used to, and it's very hot. So I hope you'll reconsider as to how you treat the trees in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Cleghorn? Okay, anyone else?
Hi, my name's Nancy Gant. I'm the one that sent the email about Sandy Beach. And I live in the Sandy Beach Trailer Park, so I am a part-timer, but I appreciate Catherine's invitation for me to come today. My email was just out of concern. I love Sandy Beach. I love the town. I've been here since I was a kid, spent my summers here, and now I'm back to retire, and I've been spending my summer here. So it's just so concerning because it's just been happening in the last couple of years. And it's kind of scary, some of the things that we've witnessed, some of us, and like you were saying about the drugs, somebody who has a boat on the fence there has witnessed it twice. But she's afraid to come forward because they saw her looking at them while that was going on. The coals in the water, I mean, that's just bad for all of us. They threw coals in a dumpster and started a fire. The police had to, or the fire department had to come. So it's just, I hope something can be done. I appreciate your attention in this, and I hope that something can be done. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for taking the time to be here. And maybe one thing I can add for you or others that live near Sandy Beach or use it is, please, by all means, if you see some illegal activity, don't hesitate to call the police department. We have some new community service officers this summer that are out and about and trying to address, issues in our parks. And so I know they would be happy to respond if they hear about it. So, good.
Some of us have called. In fact, over the weekend, there was somebody with a dog again. And there just so happened there was a police officer who was there that talked to that person. But yeah, I mean, they're letting them swim in the swim area. One's yipping and jumping on other people, so yeah.
Thank you. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak tonight? Or anyone online? Okay, if there's no one else that wants to speak, we will close the public comment and move on in the agenda. So item number 7 is the city manager's report. Drake?
If there's any questions on the materials included, we're happy to answer them, but other than that, I don't have anything further to report.
Okay, it looks like we have our monthly financial reports and police department report. Did anyone have any questions or comments on the reports? Mr. Waters?
Sam, thank you for the clean version of the registry, the check registry. It was so much nicer to review that in that format, and it sped up the whole process. So
You're welcome.
I'd appreciate it if you keep doing that.
We're all looking forward to the new software, so
Good.
more updates to come.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm sure there's a lot of work involved in the transition to the new software, so appreciate all the staff's hard work in making that move. Any other questions or comments for Drake or staff? Okay, item 8 is a council member board reports and acceptance of the Public Works Board for July 11th of 2023. Are there any questions, or Mr. Waters, any comments on those minutes?
The only comment as I was reviewing it, it said something about recommendations for future agenda items. It said restroom survey. I don't recall what that was about, but it did get approved in their meeting last week. So maybe it's true. Maybe there is a restroom survey, or a desire for a restroom survey, but I don't remember that. Otherwise, I think everything there is self-explanatory.
Mr. Waters,
Yeah.
my recollection of that was that one of the members, I don't remember who, brought up a restroom survey in another community and was inquiring if the city of Lake Mills has considered it or would consider it. That's why it's in there, from my memory at least.
All right. Thank you, Misty. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Misty. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we'll accept the Public Works Board meeting minutes from July 11th of 2023 into the record. And now on to council business, item number 9. Letter A is introduction of the Lake Mills Fire Department Chief, Jason Russ. Welcome, Chief Russ. And Mr. Daly, you have some words you want to share?
Sure. We're very excited to have Chief Russ on board. He comes to us from the Manitowoc Fire Department with over 20 years of service in the fire service. So I would just invite him up to speak and introduce himself to you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor to have been selected for the position of fire chief for the unfortunate passing of Chief Yandre at way too young of an age. A little bit about me, as Drake had mentioned, I've been in the fire service since 2003. I began as a volunteer, wanting to help out my community. Fellow coworker really was the one who got me into it. And it was something that, as I grew more and more into and got more and more training, it was something that I just desired was the career path that I wanted to take. I grew up in the Wausau area. I was working at a paper mill and had to make the decision when it came in 2007 to continue my careers working in a paper mill or moving into the fire service. The statement is very, very true, and I say it to anybody. If you find the job that you love, you will never work a day in your life, and that's truly where I'm at. My career, I was served on several departments in the central Wisconsin area. Worked up there as my first career starting out, becoming an EMT, becoming a firefighter, ranking up through lieutenant, becoming a division chief, a deputy chief, and eventually a chief in the central Wisconsin area. Had the pleasure to work with the city of Rothschild and city of Schofield to merge a department together to become one department. So my interactions with other communities and team building and working together in collaboration has been something that I definitely enjoy and look forward to keep on working on. My career eventually led me down to the Edgerton area, where I served as their deputy chief of operations at the Edgerton Fire Protection District for 5 years. One thing that eluded me, I did quite a few things down there, created their level of paramedic level service, started an interfacility transfer service that was successful and was an integral part of working together with the cities of Milton and the surrounding townships to get to the process of where they were coming together to become another fire department. So just another layer of my working together in my collaborative services. One thing eluded me, and that was a full-time career department, and I wanted to give that a try. The opportunity arose for me to move up to the city of Manitowoc. Definitely enjoyed my position up there. However, my family was just not happy up there. The lake is awful cold. It's one of the cooler spots in the state of Wisconsin, which then led us desiring and yearning to get back down into the south central Wisconsin. If you notice, I did not go back to my home area where our 2 daughters are. I have 2 daughters, 3 grandchildren, and 1 son. We did not go back to the Wausau area. We came back down here because this is where we really enjoyed it. So far, the staff here has been wonderful to work with. It's been an honor and pleasure to get to know everybody. Slowly working through getting to know all of the members of the fire department. When I came through for my walkthrough, I was very impressed that they had their own hazmat team and things like that. So you do have a fire department that is way beyond what most communities are offered with. But unfortunately, every day we're taxed with how much we can keep those things up because things are becoming more and more expensive, but we're working through those. So I look forward to my career here at the City of Lake Mills and working with the fire department and eventually getting to meet each one of you personally.
Thank you, Chief Russ, and I want to personally welcome you and thank you for being here. I know you've already started. I'm sure you're aware our fire department has many talented volunteers and employees who've dealt with a lot of loss in the last few years, so they are very deserving of a strong leader to come in and support them and lead them forward, so appreciate you being here.
One of the things I've told them, this is their department. They are the ones that are really going to determine where the path work goes and where this fire department really ends up. They're the meat and potatoes of it. They're the ones that get up in the middle of the night and respond to calls, leave their loved ones, leave family events to come and serve the citizens of this community. So I look forward to working with them and growing it as we move forward.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Chief Russ?
Just to welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here and looking forward to working with you.
It's a pleasure.
Great.
Thank you and welcome.
Okay. Letter B is Resolution 23-54, which is the city manager's appointment of a new public works director. Misty, could you read that title for us, please?
City Council Resolution 23-54, resolution confirming the city manager's appointment of Randall Myrum as the Public Works Director and Utilities Superintendent.
Okay, is there a motion, please?
Okay, I move to approve Resolution 23-54, confirmation of city manager's appointment, Randall Myrum.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bishop, second by Mr. Fields. Mr. Daly.
Mr. Myrum is currently the Public Works Director for the City of Rhinelander, where he oversees the streets, water, wastewater, and parks departments. Prior to his role in Rhinelander, Mr. Myrum worked as a project manager for the Reisman Company, CGC, and Foth Engineering. Mr. Myrum has experience working on some of the largest projects in our state over the last 15 years, including the Zoo Interchange, the Mitchell Interchange, and the Homebridge I-794 Lake Freeway. Mr. Myrum will begin his role on Monday, August 21st. We look forward to welcoming him to our team, and he is in attendance tonight. If you'd like to invite him up to introduce himself.
Fantastic. Even though we haven't confirmed him, can we invite him up without suspending the rules?
I think you can.
All right.
If you'd rather have a confirmation first, you can as well.
I move to suspend the rules to allow Mr. Randall Myrum to speak to the council.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, second by Ms. Quidnow to suspend the rules. All in favor, raise your hands. Okay. Mr. Myrum, please come up to the podium and tell us all about yourself. We look forward to meeting you.
Thank you, Council. And I feel a little suspicious being part of breaking the rules already. But my name is Randall Myrum, and I will be much more comfortable when everyone's calling me Randy. And I am, for the next 2 days, still the Public Works Director and Assistant City Administrator up in the city of Rhinelander. Like Chief Russ, my wife does not like the cold either. And this is a move that we have been looking for quite a while, and we're very excited about it. As Drake has mentioned, I have been part of the largest projects in this state as a consultant for the DOT. That is where I've spent the majority of my career over the last 20 years. About 5 years of that, I was also a consultant for different municipalities. This is what got me into municipal work. So I like to be busy. I feel more valuable and valued when I'm busy. And I like investing my time, my family's time, and our energies and efforts into a community we care about. So, are there any questions?
Any questions for Randy?
I'd like to thank him for making the drive down tonight.
Absolutely.
That's outstanding. Thank you.
No, wanted to be here.
How long is the drive?
3 hours.
Oh,
3 hour
3.
drive?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's outstanding. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, welcome to Lake Mills. You had an opportunity to hear about a few of the issues that some of our citizens are concerned in that will involve public works. So we'll look forward to you hitting the ground running on Monday.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the warmer weather.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome to you and your family. Okay, so with that, are there any other questions or comments on the resolution? Okay, if not, let's have a roll call vote on Resolution 23-54, which is the confirmation of the city manager's appointment of Public Works Director, Utility Superintendent Randall Myrum.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome. I had a chance to shake both your hands before the meeting, so I won't take time now to do that, but welcome. Okay, so we'll move on to letter C, which is Resolution 23-55 related to Brookstone Phase 8 bid package. Misty, would you read that title for us?
Resolution 23-55, bid package approval, Brookstone Meadows subdivision, Phase 8.
Is there a motion, please?
I move to approve Resolution 23-55, the bid package approval of Brookstone Meadows subdivision Phase 8.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Quidnow, second by Mr. Waters. Mr. Daly or Dwayne?
This should look familiar to all of you. We did bid this last fall for a project this year. However, the bids came in higher than the developer was anticipating, and so they asked us to hold off on the project. So we are bringing it back to rebid it yet this year. The only main change to the documents is we've extended the window of allowable completion. We've given contractors a longer window to complete the work in hopes that the added flexibility as well as bidding early achieves the most competitive pricing that we can. So this is the second to last phase of the Brookstone Meadows subdivision development agreement that was approved in the early 2000s. It will result in the creation of 18 additional single-family home lots.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or discussion? I just had one, just a clarification. I know the Public Works Board would have reviewed this before it originally came to the council, but they didn't need to review it again. They have previously recommended moving this forward, right?
They recommended the project the last time. The project has not changed except for that extended window for completion, and so it's just a procedural allowance for us to rebid the project that's been previously approved.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, if not, can we have a roll call vote on Resolution 23-55, which is the Brookstone bid package approval?
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, next agenda item is Resolution 23-56 involving a waiver of fees for Lake Mill Senior Bingo. Misty, would you read that title, please?
City Council Resolution 23-56, waiver of fees for Lake Mill Senior Bingo.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve City Council Resolution 23-56, which is a waiver of fees for the Lake Mills Senior Bingo.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, second by Mr. Fields. Mr. Daly.
With your permission, I would invite Mr. Waters. It's a proposal that he brought forward for preparation. Okay. So if he doesn't mind, I'd just ask him to speak to it.
Sure. I'm bringing this before council since I don't think that that was any of our intentions to to create a hardship for the senior bingo in the community. That it's an organization that doesn't generate a profit. They do it solely for the benefit of the community and the seniors within the community. And it's just a great activity. And I think they do it on a weekly basis. So based on that, they'd be seeing a lot of fees based on our current policy. And I think it just is common sense for us to move forward and waive these fees and allow them to continue to operate and provide this great service to the community of Lake Mills. Any questions?
Thank you, and I think we all received some correspondence about this since the policy was adopted. Ms. Quetta?
Are we aware of any other types of community events like this so that we're maybe going to cover more than just one particular organization? Not that I'm against senior bingo, because I'm all for it.
Yeah, I did look into the Meals for Wheels type of organization where they offer food service and they use our facility on a more frequent basis, actually. And that's actually a division of the Jefferson County. So they already have an exemption, so there's no need to have a waiver for that group at this point.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Mr. Waters, I appreciate you bringing this forward, and one of the things I was thinking about after we all received that email is that I didn't think to ask the question when we were reviewing the policy about whether there were any existing groups that used the rooms more than once a month. And so I think that was sort of the basis of our policy decision, was to allow sanctioned users, and correct me if I misstate this, Mrs. Bishop, but to allow sanctioned users once a month for free. And so I wish I would have asked at the time that we were reviewing it, are there any groups that use it more than once a month, so that we could understand, who might be impacted by that. Having said that, I also know that as we looked at this policy, I think the premise, or at least the reason I voted in support of the sanctioned user list and the $200 fee is that, to me, it felt like a nominal fee that does help go toward the cleaning and maintenance and so forth of our community rooms. And so I wondered if you had thought about maybe just waiving the $100 use fees for more than once a month, but still perhaps treating the senior bingo similar to other users where they could be a sanctioned user and, do the $200 to get on that sanctioned users list. Had you thought about that as maybe an alternative?
Very briefly, and then I felt that the $200 should be waived for this organization because it is a group that does this for a charity. They don't make money, and everything that they make, they give back to the individuals that participate in the program.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Bishop?
Yes, the way the motion is currently written, this would be waiving the $200 forever, where every other sanctioned user would have to come back every 2 years for an application. Part of that was to make sure that the users are current and that they still desire to use the facilities, and that they're paying again for that use that Ms. Curler alluded to. So is that the intent of the motion, to waive the $200 forever, and or do we want to see this again in a couple of years?
My intent is to waive it forever, but if somebody wanted to amend, I guess that is something that could be reviewed by this council.
Do we really need to have that kind of red tape? I mean, senior bingo is senior bingo. There's really nothing that needs to be discussed about it. It seems like it would be, and has been, for 50 years in this community. I don't think anything's going to change.
Mrs. Bishop?
My only other point along the same lines would be in regard to waiving the $100 fee. Theoretically, then the senior group could use the facilities every day of the month for no fee and incur that type of wear and tear and cost on the building. Is that the type of use that we are okay with if we approve this motion?
Again, I don't see that as a possibility. I trust our seniors and in our community, and I think if we were to do anything beyond what's been said here, and I'm speaking for you, Mr. Waters, I apologize. I also feel that it's important that we send the right message. We trust our community members. We trust our seniors. We trust the people who are going to come in and do this type of activity, because it's not something that's going to be bringing about destruction. It's just a bunch of people coming together to play a game.
I have a question, and maybe this is for Mr. Daly or Mrs. Bishop as the kind of the lead author on the policy, but it's my understanding the sanctioned users process that we have effectively starts next February, right? So I don't know that we put an official start date for the new policy, but I'm assuming that sort of our old policy is kind of still in place until that sanctioned users process starts in February, right?
That's correct, and I was giving a north-south head nod. You know, it really was a phased-in approach with council action to be taken next year, next spring, really, to allow users to be informed of the policy and then to bring everybody back in line with a solid approval policy. So that's the correct understanding.
And Mr. Daly, that's your understanding, your staff as well?
Correct. We have not implemented the policy yet. That's my understanding, is we would, it would take effect in that time period, but the council can act preemptively as well.
I was waiting to see if you were going to raise your hand or not, just before speaking.
I was trying to see if there's anybody else. My final thought probably is, along the basis that this resolution has been presented, that senior bingo is for the benefit of the community, and they're not an organization that would make a profit, so it would in some ways be unfair to maybe assess a fee on that basis, that using those parameters as council, if there was anybody else, again, using those same parameters, who would ask for a waiver of the fees or some kind of other waiver, that the council would also grant those waivers on the same grounds. So that's kind of how I feel about this.
I think we need to review that on a case-by-case basis, and the case in front of us tonight is senior bingo.
I'd like to, I guess I thought I would have, in light of the discussion that we're having here tonight, and just for clarity and tying it to the policy, rather than having, well, I guess I'd like for us to consider in the now therefore be it resolved provision of this motion to identify that we are designating the Lake Mill Senior Bingo as a sanctioned user, and that we are waiving community center reservation and use fees for up to 1 day a week. So it recognizes their consistent use. It does, and their historic use. It doesn't, I don't want to be untrusting. I think it's a wonderful group. It provides a great outlet for a lot of seniors in our community. But I just think some clarity would be good, so that we're not, it doesn't turn into a everyday, I guess, if there was an interest in continuing to use it on a more regular basis. So I haven't made a motion yet, but I guess I just wanted to see what folks would think about that idea.
Well, I would second that motion if you were to make it.
That's kind of why I asked if there were other organizations that fall underneath an umbrella similar to the Lake Mills Senior Bingo, because if that were the case, then instead of looking at this one after another, it would be something that we could look at more globally. However, Mr. Waters has done his due diligence and looked and made sure that there aren't any other sanctioned users who fall underneath the umbrella that the Senior Bingo would technically fall under, which is a group of people coming together in a location to play a game. While there is money exchanged, the money does not go into a business. It goes back to the people who put in the money to play. And if Mr. Waters is correct and there is no other group that does things like this, I just don't see why we have to nitpick on those little details. It just makes sense to me to just get it done and over with. And again, thinking about what Ms. Bishop said, I think a case-by-case basis is the appropriate way to handle any incoming types of groups where that might be. I know that we talked a lot about what makes a sanctioned user, and we had conversations about like the Boy Scouts of America or other, I'm trying to think of one of the ones that.
It was nonprofit groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, those you've indicated in the previous resolution or in that ordinance to make sure that those are very clearly laid out, right? So I feel like if we do this, it's not going to undo what we've already done.
Well, as I'm thinking about our new policy, I think what really drove us to look at changing it was a level of subjectivity and a lack of standards for the city manager to decide who could or couldn't be a sanctioned user, and I'm just speaking for myself personally, that was my understanding of why we wanted to revise it, was to have it be clearer so that it wasn't a discretionary decision. The council does have discretion, and so anybody can come and ask for a change in our policy, and we can have the discretion to make that change on a case-by-case basis. I like the idea of having some clearly stated reasons or good clarity in why we're making that, so that other people, may have a reason to understand, how we might reach that conclusion.
So are you proposing adding another whereas to help with that clarity?
Well, I guess, now that you mention it, it does strike me that a whereas that recognizes the long-standing use of this group, the long-standing weekly use of the community building for senior bingo.
I wouldn't do it as whereas. I would add it to the back of the resolved statement.
So sort of a recognition from the council of the longstanding use of this organization, used by this organization.
Well, it says the City of Lake Mills Common Council waives all community center reservation and use fees for Lake Mills Senior Bingo. And then if you wanted to add once a week type of thing, I would think you would just add a sentence behind that.
Sure, and I guess I'm trying to tie into what Ms. Quedna was just talking about is also like, what is the reason that we're waiving it is in part because of the recognition of their longstanding use. So those are kind of two related things, I guess.
I think the longevity is one thing, and I also think that the use of, or how it's being used does play a role in the decision, in my opinion. But then I suppose that could be a double-edged sword, because then, other organizations could say, well, we're not doing any exchange of money, yada, yada, yada. So I like the idea of it being more about the longevity of the Lake Mills Senior Bingo, and I would support a motion that would include that.
Okay,
Before you make the motion, Can we ask a question to the city manager?
Oh, absolutely, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Waters.
Fantastic. Mr. Daly, are you aware, do they use it once a week? Is there any other uses that this group uses the facility for, that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. Misty, are you aware of any other uses by this group?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
And as a follow-up, are there any other groups that use a community center room more than once a month on a regular basis? not non-government?
On a regular basis, I would imagine there are times where Legendary Lake Mills uses the room more than once a month. I don't know if it's regular or how frequently. They have a standing once a month meeting in the room.
And I believe they have a
They're considered
specific-
City of Lake Mills, though, aren't they?
They're considered sort of quasi-government, I think, under this policy, so,
Is that? Oh,
yeah, so
we're a
they're treated.
member.
I'm
They're treated-
We're a
pretty
member,
sure I'm
but-
double checking.
Okay.
Yeah, Legendary Lake Mills is included as a part of the City of Lake
Okay.
Mills, per page 5.
Other than the Jefferson County Nutrition Program, none that are sticking out in my mind right now, but I can't guarantee that I'm not missing something.
Okay, I would like to propose an amendment. I'm making a motion to amend Resolution 23-56 in the paragraph beginning now, therefore be it resolved, this 15th day of August 2023, that the City of Lake Mills Common Council, and it would add the phrase, comma, in recognition of the long-standing use of the community center by the Lake Mills Senior Bingo, comma, and then continue waives all community center reservation and use fees for Lake Mills Senior Bingo for up to once a week. Adding the phrase for up to once a week.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Curler, second by Mrs. Bishop to amend Resolution 23-56. Misty, can you read that paragraph back to make sure we've got it?
I got bits of it, and I took down the time so I could go back and get the exact language
Okay.
later.
Okay. Do people feel like they grasped the amendment and they're clear about it? Any discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call on the motion to amend Resolution 23-56?
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on Resolution 23-56 as amended? Okay, can we have a roll call vote on Resolution 23-56 as amended?
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Abstain.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay. Next agenda item, letter E, is Resolution 23-57, authorizing a settlement of claim related to 612 East Lake Street. Misty, would you please read that title for us, please?
City Council Resolution 23-57, authorizing city manager to execute a settlement agreement by and between Shapiro Family Wisconsin LLC and 612 Lake Street LLC and the City of Lake Mills concerning Jefferson County Circuit Court Case 2022 CV 000125 and property tax assessments of 612 East Lake Street for 2021, 2022, and 2023.
Is there a motion, please?
I move to approve City Council Resolution 23-57, authorizing the city manager to execute a settlement agreement by and between Shapiro Family Wisconsin LLC and everything Ms. Quest said.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bishop, second by Ms. Quidnow. Okay, so we have a resolution before us. We have a copy of this proposed settlement agreement, and we have a memo from our attorney on this. The council's been briefed on it. Mr. Daly, anything to add?
Just that city staff and the attorney representing the city on this matter recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this resolution? Okay. If not, can we have a roll call on City Council Resolution 23-57 related to the settlement agreement for 612 Lake Street?
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, next agenda item, Resolution 23-58, which is the 2024 to 28 Capital Improvement Plan. Misty, would you read that title for us, please?
City Council Resolution 23-58, resolution adopting the 2024 Capital Improvement Plan.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 23-58, resolution adopting the 2024 Capital Improvement Plan.
Second.
Mr. Fields, second.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Quidnow, second by Mr. Fields, by an oath. Okay, staff.
Sure, so the CIP is included in your packet. One thing you'll notice is Dwayne and I went to great lengths to ensure that it was as comprehensive of a document this year as possible. So you'll see some additions that haven't traditionally been included in the CIP, but are. So the Brookstone under special assessments, you'll see the Brookstone project is included in there. We've included the maintenance plan, which has traditionally been located elsewhere, as well as included all departments that we considered as capital expenditures. Perhaps the most notable deviation from the plan that was approved last year is Milton Street has been delayed to 2025 under the recommended CIP. That is in recognition that the city anticipates construction of a Sandy Beach restaurant in 2024. And then you'll also see another attachment and a handout that this evening does provide an analysis by our financial advisor on the kind of the financial impacts. Now, one important thing to remember is that their analysis assumes that the capital improvement plan is 100% borrowed for. That's not decided tonight, but it provides you the clear picture of if you did borrow for all of these projects, how it would impact the debt levy as well as the debt capacity. So I know the print is a little small, but the third table 3 is what shows you the debt capacity. So as we would move through the plan, you would see that we peak in 2028, where it rises to 66% of our allowable debt limit before it starts to fall off again, as we don't have any projects. We only go 5 years out on our capital improvement plan. Ellers would typically wouldn't recommend that you go beyond 75% of your debt limit, so we do still have space there. That's to ensure that the city maintains debt capacity for emergency situations, or for I guess you could consider, a large community need that needed to be filled that would warrant going in excess of something like that. Table 2, the blue box on the left is existing debt. On the right, on the far side of that blue box there, you can see tax rate and impact on a home valued at $350,000, and then that same information is then available under what's called the proposed debt. So that would be the additional debt would be added on if the CIP was 100% borrowed for in each of the years that are included in it. That may not occur. Projects do, the out years especially, are flexible and can change as conditions of streets may change. Some may age faster than others, or priorities of the city council change, and that other projects are given a higher priority than in the past. So if there's questions about specific projects, Dwayne and I will do our best to answer them. And then if there's an approval tonight, then it gets incorporated into the budget that the council ultimately approves later this fall.
Any questions for staff? Mrs. Bishop?
I'm just going to start right off the top on the first page here. What's the northern system improvements? I'm not familiar with the term or the brand or whatever
We
it is.
have a significant electric user, the dairy farm north of the city. They're doing some expansions and are growing at a pretty rapid rate. And so to continue serving them, as well as making some improvements to our infrastructure on whole in preparation of future development that could occur out there, we'll take advantage of that opportunity. And so upgrade that service over the years, as well as establish the utility in some additional territory up there. But that service to an existing customer is the impetus for that project.
Did you have a follow-up? Okay. A couple lines above that, I had a question. I see under the electric, Milton Street, $200,000 is shown in 2024. Why is that in 24 if the construction was moved to 25?
So ideally, the electric utility, the staff on the electric utility prefers to get their work done prior to the road reconstruction project so that they are in and out before the rest of it goes on. That has not always been the case with these projects, but with this delay, it provides that opportunity to be able to do so. They are able to do it alongside the project, as they have done on other projects in the past. But in consulting with our acting foreman right now, their preference is to be able to do their work prior to the general contractor coming in for the street reconstruction project.
Okay, and a follow-up to Mrs. Bishop's question. I'm curious, so this is almost $1 million over 3 years for the northern system improvements. So would expect revenue, utility revenue in return for those expenditures?
Yes, so there's the pieces of that project that you won't see, that aren't listed on this, is that the improvements that are only to benefit that user are paid for by that user per PSC regulations. And then the other improvements that are made along the way that benefit the utility as a whole, the city pays for those. But yes, the customer up there is a significant user of electricity and does result in a significant monthly bill for their use of that electricity.
So in this work that's being proposed under that line item, that's the city's cost that's not being covered by the dairy, and that would be for future growth, I guess. Would that be fair to say?
It would accommodate future growth, and then Dwayne, you can speak perhaps in more detail.
So the project is currently split into three portions, 3 areas. The first one and the larger one is crossing the interstate, and thus the time frame and the cost is much higher than the other sections. The other sections then run to areas that are within the city, and then an area that is outside of the city but still within our looping of the existing system. And then portions of a third portion that Drake has mentioned is an area that is directly serving the customer. And these are the current estimates that the utilities engineer, forester engineer, has put together, with the intention that as the first phase moves forward, those will be revised for that second and third phase. And obviously the last phase would be the portion that would be by the customer. So those will be refined as the project moves forward.
And one more question then, is this time sensitive that it needs to be in the 3 years that is designated, or can it be postponed a year?
They are growing. The customer is growing at a very rapid clip their operations, and so we would we would want to avoid a situation where the utility is limiting that growth because of the inability to serve, and it would, to not do the improvements that benefit the system as the whole at the same time as we are kind of moving out for that customer would result in inefficiencies. So we would recommend keeping the schedule that you have. And then a reminder that I didn't mention going through Eller's analysis is the Eller's analysis only considers GO debt. So the electric utility projects don't contribute to that debt limit. They're revenue backed by the rates we receive, and so the ratepayers are a larger pool than the city taxpayers because it goes outside of our city limits.
So it doesn't affect our debt levy, but it may still be funded by debt. It would just be utility debt.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Waters.
Dwayne, it looks like there's an infrastructure system put in place here that we haven't had before, the testing of utility poles. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Sure. This may have been under maintenance of overhead lines in the past, but what TJ and I and Drake wanted to include in this budget was to explain that the department is looking to do more pole inspections, pole attachment, revenue generation review, and then from the pole inspection side, equipment is getting older. And so what we're trying to do is implement a maintenance program that's similar to our street maintenance program. Look, and this detail, this $15,000 to $17,000 a year would provide dollars for a consultant to come in, do inspections, and TJ and I are in the process of analyzing the cost-benefit analysis of having our own staff do that versus having a consultant come in. What we're trying to do is show that there's an effort to develop a program similar to the street maintenance program. And what these results will show in this pole testing will then, if there is a flag, say the pole testing determines that there's a pole that's too old in the system, or it's deteriorating at a rate that's faster. So it's, in my mind, I'm looking at it like our PACER ratings that we do for our street maintenance. That will occur with the poles. One thing that happens with that, and is not in this budget, but is really in the operations and maintenance of the utility under overhead pole maintenance or overhead system maintenance, if these pole testings require that a pole gets flagged, that it needs to be replaced, then the utility is required to replace it. So we have to, and the reason why we spread this out into multiple years, and that equates to about 20%, so that every 5 years we're testing all of the poles. The intention is to try and spread out all of those poles that would be red flagged, and therefore spread out the cost of any of the maintenance that is not in the capital. Does that explain that?
Yeah, as a follow-up on that.
Sure.
So after 5 years, you're going to get through all of our inventory. Do you anticipate that would start over again, or is there going to be a break, or you're putting the poles on a hierarchy system? Are you just going to look at high risk after that, or how do you envision it going in year 6?
So I envision that we will probably be able to either create a gap year or gap number of years, depending on what the results in the first 5 years show us. Or we decide to go to a smaller, rather than 20% a year, drop to maybe 10% and then just run it as an annual basis. But I think what we've looked at right now was we don't want to do 100% because we wouldn't be able to afford to replace all of the poles in year 1 if that is so what the results would show us. And so we're trying to show that this program is going to extend for a number of years on either gap or reduce the amount. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And one other impetus for it is utilities across the state. We're receiving more and more requests for pole attachments from cellular companies, telecommunication companies, fiber, companies, other private utilities that have a right to be in the right of way and operate there, but want to use our poles to do it. And we want to ensure that the poles that they're attaching to are capable of supporting additional apparatus or infrastructure on top of them, and that we are adequately receiving, the revenue from those companies being on our poles to assist in the replacement and remediation, repair, whatever maintenance costs we may have within the utility that they are benefiting from as well.
It makes a lot of sense to me, and it seems like there'll be some efficiencies and trying to move it into a maintenance program. So hopefully Randy's taking notes. He'll be reporting in 5 years on how it's going and whether we want to have that as an ongoing maintenance program. Mrs. Bishop.
I had some follow-up questions to this conversation. So how are we currently identifying poles that either need repair, can't be attached to, et cetera? What's that process?
So as far as the pole attachments, we have been undergoing a review of our GIS system. Quite a bit of that information is currently in the system. However, we have been working with staff, Dan, and the pole agreements that are there, and reviewing the revenue that has come in the past against knowledge, especially with recent requests for additional pole attachments. As far as pole deterioration, obviously staff is looking at that and the information that's in the GIS, looking at our oldest poles and reviewing. But again, similar to street maintenance, having a program that is saying we are going to look at 20% every year drives that need home before we get to the point where storms are creating failure in some poles because of wind or other.
My follow-up to that is I just don't know that we need to go out and hire another consultant to tell us what you just told us, what we're already doing, and to put it on debt to boot.
Yeah, so we wouldn't necessarily have to borrow for this. Likely we could accommodate using cash for a capital expenditure like this instead. But I think the difficulty that we have is our utility staff is not large enough to adequately review all and replace the poles that we might have within the entire system. There simply just aren't enough of them to do that and accomplish their other tasks as well. So we're not hitting close to 20% of evaluation of poles in a given year. So we're not hitting that metric. So there are poles that haven't been evaluated in far longer than that. And so this is an attempt to have a methodical review and get through the entire system to have a full inventory of what poles do we have. A cedar pole can last 100 years. There was a period, 10 years ago where green treated poles became more common. We've discovered that green treated poles, they don't last nearly as long. They're not, the savings you get from the pole doesn't make up for the frequency in which you have to replace them. So making sure we're identifying where those green treated poles are and what their condition is, and then being able to respond to the many requests we're getting for pole attachments. The electric utility staff are struggling to keep up with that without some outside help. But we can likely, for the expense that we think it will come up with, we can look at cash funding that piece of it instead of borrowing and putting it onto the debt if that is a concern at the time that we roll that out. I think we could accommodate that within a maintenance plan line item within their operating budget.
If I more points.
You turned off your mic.
I turned off my mic. 2 points. One, the reason for this was to introduce this maintenance program and to show that staff is looking at this concern. The second point to your question, Ms. Bishop, is that we are also, and I'm in the process of presenting that to Drake, is we are analyzing some costs from quotes on companies that do this work versus staff rates And we are looking into whether it's cost effective to look at some of these companies.
Any other questions? I've got a couple more. Under grounds and facilities, next couple of years, I see, next year, Bartles Beach seawall repair, $145,000. I'm wondering about, have we started a permit process for that yet? It took quite a while to get the dredging permit. Has that been designed? Are they looking at any alternative, maybe less severe solid structure that could be installed there? Or is it just repair or replacement? I don't know too much about the project.
It is deteriorating and potentially, let's see if I state this correctly, Dwayne, contributing to erosion and sand buildup that it should be holding off of and contributing to that degradation of that. I did talk to Director Schreiner about this project specifically during my review, and asked what priority it was for him. And this is the one he highlighted that he would prefer not to delay. It was his number one priority for the projects that he has listed there, so would prefer not to delay this one. He said at most maybe a year you could delay it, but it has not been designed, and so I can't speak to what it will look like after its installation. Dwayne, I don't know if you.
I'm looking for the email. Eric and I met with a structural engineer from Strand about a year ago. I'm looking for the email regarding that. The intention was to, if there was some maintenance that could be done with the existing wall to reinforce it versus a total reconstruct. There may be portions where it could be reinforced, I think was the discussion in my memory. There are some areas where it's deteriorating, especially at the corners, that might require some reconstruction. I can dig for that email. I was looking for the Planet software for more information.
And that's okay. I'm not necessarily proposing to move it to a different year, but I just wanted to understand, I guess, sort of the scope of the project. And I don't know if the council is going to be seeing that specific design. I don't know if that's in our purview or the Parks Board, but certainly it's a pretty severe, hard surface that holds up a well-used park. And I'm sure there are maybe impacts to neighbors with literal drift, those kinds of things. And so I just didn't know if this was going to be an opportunity to design it in a way to maybe reduce some of those erosion impacts, water quality impacts, things like that.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah, please.
So I attended a joint Rock Lake meeting, and some of the residents that were down lake, I should say, we're seeing some erosion that's creating issues with the lakefront property that they have, that it's raising the bed of the lake, actually. Is this addressing that issue, do you know, or is it related to that issue, or? I was not aware of it until I went to the meeting, and that's kind of, as you were talking, it kind of made me think about that.
So these properties are south of the channel?
That's my understanding, yes.
So this wall is actually north of the channel.
Correct.
So in my opinion, if there would be inflow of material, it would be going down the channel rather than heading south of the channel.
Okay.
In my opinion, I'm not sure exactly what the details of, you're saying that there's silt buildup, but to me, the flow is generally down the channel toward the dam. And so if that potentially is coming from the beach side, to me, it would be making a turn at the channel. I did read inside our database, It is an 80-foot section that's being considered, and I believe from memory it is at the corner. And the remainder was reinforcement of any cracks and other deterioration that are happening in the wall.
So it's not a reconstruction, it's a repair and maybe reconstructing a portion of it?
Correct.
Okay. I think, Mr. Waters, one situation I'm aware of is people that live near our sand beaches where there can be some drift of sand going into the water and then depositing on nearby properties, but I don't know about whether the seawall is causing that similar situation or not with the erosive forces of the water. I'm not sure.
And I can also ask Director Schreiner to provide a report to the city council on the specifics of it at a future date if the council would like, or during the budget process as well. There would be an opportunity.
And that may come forward from the Joint Rock Lake recommendations. That'll be coming back to
Sure.
council in the next month or two, probably.
Yeah. And I do want to make sure that we're, nothing is set in stone beyond 2024, obviously, as we're looking at this plan, but I think we're looking at this tonight so that we can give you direction in developing the budget. So hopefully we can, get all of our questions answered so that we feel comfortable with what's in here. Having said that, I just wanted to look in 2025 for grounds and facilities. There's a playground equipment, PIP, which I'm assuming is poured in place, $170,000. Do you recall what that one's for?
1 second.
Yeah, Mrs. Bishop.
I was going to say something while you were looking. It's just one statement about poured in place. If it's that rubber resin material, I'd really like us to look at a different option, and I'll cover this on Parks Board, I guess, because that stuff gets hot in the summer. I tried to take my toddler over there a month ago, and he couldn't go from the beach barefoot onto the material. We had to go back, get his shoes, and go on it.
Gee.
And I burned my feet, so if that's what we're looking at for that expense, I'd rather try to look at other materials as well.
Would a color change help?
It would have to be white, but I don't know.
Good
Blinding
question.
white.
Yeah.
Like you're in Santorini.
So the description does mention a less maintenance and requirement than the wood chips that have been used in the past. So I would agree with Ms. Bishop that that Eric is discussing the same type that was used at Bartles Beach. The description that he provided, this would probably be located at Memorial Park, as some of the oldest and
Okay.
conditioned playground equipment and needs.
So I would like to explore a little bit more about Sandy Beach on the top of the second page, and that's part of the reason I'm asking about some of the things in 2025, just because I'm wondering, and we talked about this a little bit at a previous meeting, but, the restaurant I know is going to be a big ticket item. Would there be any possibility of moving the parking work up a year?
So the way it's structured now is that we would envision that the restaurant is constructed during the 2024 construction season. The first parking lot would be the parking lot area closest to that restaurant, and that would be constructed in early 2025 during the before summer, so that to minimize the impact as much as possible during the peak season, I guess you could say, for the restaurant. I would need to probably go back to the spreadsheets to determine how adding 1.3 1.3 million to 2024 would impact the debt levy and the debt capacity, and if that was acceptable to the city council. I would imagine if you tried to take the entire parking lot, the entire 2.6 million, that's the 1.3 in 25 and the 1.3 in 26, and put that into 24, which would also then, we would likely move the Sandy Beach lift station up to 2024 as well. You're talking about a very large project. So to do it all at once would be difficult. I think we could go back to the spreadsheet and run the numbers on moving the 1.3 to 2024. I would imagine we would still stay. We would likely still stay below the 75%, but you would see that jump occur, much earlier by adding an additional $2.6 million, probably a little bit less because we would take away some of the inflationary escalators that we have in for the out years. It's possible, but we wanted to be cognizant of the fact that the council has expressed some desire to limit borrowings in any given year and avoid big jumps in borrowings or increases in the debt levy from year to year. But we could explore that option, yes. But the goal with how it is now is still to minimize the impact on a new restaurant as much as possible. But there would still be likely some impact on the facility.
And so I'm appreciate that information, and I understand the lift station does go with the second phase of parking lot, and so those are currently lined up in 2026, and I'm assuming those would probably kind of need to stay together. I don't know where the beachfront fits into that, if that can be shifted. The reason I'm bringing these up is that, we clearly heard from a resident of the manufactured home community tonight. We've heard anecdotally from others over the years that some concerns about activities that less than desirable activities at Sandy Beach, and I think the sooner we can get a restaurant in place there and more activity associated with the restaurant, I think that will help improve some of that. And I just want to make sure that, we've got a decent parking lot to support that restaurant, and that would help with some of those improvements. So I'm not proposing to move all the $2.6 million of parking lot into 2024, but I guess if I heard you right, it sounds like the first phase of parking lot is proposed for like early 2025, so it would be in place in the summer of 25. That's the goal?
That is the goal.
Okay. Mr. Waters.
And does the lift station correspond with the parking lot work for the second phase?
Yes, because we have to tear up that area.
Okay.
For those improvements.
Okay, so they need to happen together, basically.
We think it's the most cost efficient to do so. We certainly wouldn't want to construct a new parking lot and then do the lift station because we would rip it all up again, and doing it before that would cause significant disruption to that parking lot already. So we believe it would be the best course of action to do them together.
So what about the beachfront work? I mean, is that something that could be, and I'm not necessarily proposing it, just wanting to understand, could that be shifted to a later year? It seems like it's a little more standalone.
It is to some degree. However, there are amenities that are in the parking lot now. If you recall, the volleyball courts were moved to the western portion of what would be the new parking lot. So there's a little bit of probably some of the beachfront activities or beachfront project that would have to be undertaken in order to convert the parking lot in the second parking lot phase.
Well, and, we may have a year we will likely have a year without people being able to live in the manufactured homes, and maybe there's a year without beach volleyball. I mean, maybe those are just some of the things that we would have to consider. But also, there are a lot of mature trees in the area of the proposed beachfront. And we're hearing a lot about people's concerns about mature trees, not just on streets, but in the parks. And I think our citizens are going to maybe want to have a fresh look at that beachfront aspect of the plan before we move forward with it. So again, I guess I'm just kind of tossing it out for us to think about that. That may be something that we might want to move out a year if we want to gather more public input on that and have, updated policies with respect to mature trees and other things like that.
I guess I'm not as concerned about the 2025 time period. I'm more concerned about the 2026 time period. I know we have time to work with that, but as I look at this proposal, it seems that year is kind of a heavy year, and if it would make sense to maybe shift something forward or shift something back to kind of lighten things up there, but we have time to react to it.
And to that point, I appreciate you highlighting that, Mr. Waters, because that is that's a large expenditure year out of the 5 years in the plan. And the Ellers financing, as you noted, Mr. Daly, in Table 3, it peaks in 2028 at 66%, and that includes, 5 years worth of borrowing. But if we borrow again, the year after, that 66% doesn't necessarily go down. So I think we have to be mindful that we may be at a higher debt capacity number for a while and not necessarily be dropping after 2028.
Yeah, that's correct. The other thing to consider is that as the valuation of the city increases, your debt capacity increases as well. So these are projections, so they're not perfect, but that debt capacity, if we had higher equalized value growth than this is projecting, that capacity we'll have more capacity than this is showing right now. We tend to be on the more conservative side when estimating, but we can't tell exactly what it's going to be as well. So this entire document, up until projects and expenditures are approved, is in flux. They are estimates of probable costs, and so we will have to react to what comes before us in any given year or on any given project. And be receptive to any priority changes or conditions that warrant, revising this plan. So it is certainly, adoption of it tonight does not lock in all 5 of those years, as it's changed from the last time the 5-year plan was approved. So we do need to be flexible and adapt to what comes before us and be as nimble as we can be in any given year that's ahead of us.
I had one more item I wanted to just highlight and verify. Under the street department, in the middle of the second page, third item is yard waste center, and I note that that's renamed. In the past we've had money targeted, or not money, but line item targeted for compost, and I think the Public Works Board has recommended, temporarily moving away from that and just doing updates to and possibly relocating the yard waste center. So is that what we're seeing here, is some different dollars with that in mind?
Compost was listed for many, many years, and there was no movement on it, and the discussion has kind of been centered on how do we become more efficient and more capable of maintaining our yard waste collection. And so we did acquire some land south of CP Avenue that we envision for relocating it away, to get it away from the creek and allow for some larger areas. And so that $20,000 is really what we considered kind of the bare minimum. If we used city staff, used some leftover millings that we have to create a road, a gravel, it won't be gravel, roadway into it, and set up some fencing or jersey barriers or some kind of barrier to keep cars from going in uncontrolled, and getting that set up and getting it away from the area that we're in right now that's causing us some troubles of it spilling out into the roadway, being close to the creek, being unsupervised, and having things being dumped there that shouldn't be. So that is kind of the amount that we think that we needed to do as much work with our in-house staff here to get that up and running in 2024 and make that transition.
Sounds good. Okay, are there any other questions or comments on the capital improvement plan? So, Mr. Daly, you were looking tonight for us to pass this resolution to approve the plan, and then you would use that to inform the budget that you're developing for us.
That's correct. And then always remember that City Council will still, review projects before they go out to bid. You'll still award projects. So there's several more approvals that come after adoption of this plan. And several, when we actually have real numbers and more concrete things for you to review, there's those other opportunities where these come back before the council. So this is the plan, but the plan can change, but it will inform the creation of the 2024 budget.
Well, thank you. I think the discussion's been helpful, and seeing the details that'll hopefully save us time when we get into the budget discussion, so we know what a lot of these items are. Are there any other questions or comments on the 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan? Is there anyone that wants to make an amendment?
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt. One thing that may change and would obviously come back before the city council is with Chief Russ coming on board. He is doing a review of fire department apparatus and equipment. So he'll continue to do that as we head into the budget process, and we'll keep you informed of anything comes out of that we believe should be inserted into the plan or would warrant a juggling of any of the items in there currently.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Chief, you're going to help us with that 2026 issue that I just talked about? You don't have to comment.
Don't commit to anything.
I'm sorry.
Don't do it.
Okay, and then I would note that the Public Works Board did recommend approval of this. They limited their scope to the areas that are within their purview, but I know they got to review this full plan, so. Okay, if there is no further questions or discussion, we'll move to a roll call vote on Resolution 23-58, which is adoption of the 2024 to 2028 capital improvement plan.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to letter G, which is Ordinance 1255, amending the City Code, Chapter 279, related to the Uniform Building Code. This is our third reading tonight. Misty, would you please read that title for us?
Ordinance 1255, amending City Code Chapter 279, Building Construction, Article 1, Uniform Building Code, Section 279-3, Adoption of Commercial Building Code, Section 279-6, Building Inspector, and Section 279-24, Violations and Penalties.
I'll
Thank you.
move
Is there
to
a motion?
approve ordinance 1255.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, second by Mrs. Bishop. Is there any update from staff?
If there's specific questions, I did ask Troy to be here tonight to answer them, but we don't have any changes since the initial presentation of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. And as a refresher, this is primarily to bring our uniform dwelling code in line with the state code.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, let's have a roll call vote on ordinance 1255.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Hi.
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay. Next agenda item, letter H, is ordinance 1257, which is regarding a zoning amendment from Brian Bauman for property at 904 East Lake Street. Misty, would you, let's see, this is the second reading. Misty, would you read that title?
Ordinance 1257, amending City of Lake Mills Ordinance Section 660-44, official zoning map, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, parcel identification number 246-0714-1822002, owner Brian Bauman, 904 East Lake Street, Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. That was the second reading. Mr. Daly, is there any reason not to move forward with the third reading tonight?
Not in staff's opinion. Parcels that get annexed into the city all come in under the rural development zoning classification. So this change, single-family residential R14 is consistent with the current use of the property. So staff has no reason as to why you could not act tonight if you so chose.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Well, I move to go ahead and go to the third reading.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bishop, second by Ms. Quidnow to proceed to the third reading. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Can I comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, discussion. I'm sorry.
I guess when I look at these type of readings, it gives the community an opportunity to comment on this, so the neighbors would have one more chance to come in and comment if they oppose this for whatever reason. I don't know why, but that would be the reason why I would hesitate to move to a third reading tonight, so that the community would have a chance to respond to this.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to proceed to a third reading? Mrs. Bishop.
I just have a response, and it's not that I disagree, Mr. Waters, it's just that we have moved these forward before, and I guess I don't know, even if there was commentary on it, does this just not get rezoned then if we don't vote on it? I don't know that there's another option that we would even consider if there was opposition, so.
For me, I consider that there really is not a change in land use, and it did go through an annexation process where neighbors had an opportunity to be aware of it at that time as well, so.
And there was I'm sorry, I interrupted, but there was a plan commission vote on this too? Did I miss something in the?
Yes, there's a
Yeah,
plan
so-
commission recommends approval.
That would have had a hearing too, I believe.
Right.
Can I reply?
Absolutely, yes.
The ordinance does call for 3 readings.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, with line of discussion, let's have a roll call vote on the motion to proceed to a third reading of ordinance 1257.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
No.
Mrs. Bishop.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, thank you. Misty, could you please do a third reading of the title of ordinance 1257?
Ordinance 1257, amending City of Lake Mills Ordinance Section 660-44, official zoning map, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, parcel identification number 246-0714-1822002, owner Brian Bauman, 904 East Lake Street, Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Is there a motion on ordinance 1257?
I move to approve ordinance 1257.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bishop, second by Ms. Quedno. Any discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call on ordinance 1257, please?
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Ms. Quedno.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda is number 10, recommendations for future agendas. I know we will have the city budget will be introduced sometime in September. Mr. Daly, what are your thoughts on that?
The levy limit worksheet they've announced gets released on September 5th. So it's
Okay.
likely September 15th will be the first presentation of the 2024 budget.
Okay. Okay. And then we've typically had a couple of work sessions, so we would probably be scheduling some work sessions after the budget's introduced. Okay. Ms. Quidno?
I have two things. I would like to open up a discussion regarding having more public exposure to us. One of the thoughts I had when we were listening to information regarding the comp plan was that there was a concern that the community doesn't feel that we are accessible, or perhaps that they don't know who we are. And so I would like to discuss some ideas around what that might look like. The other thing that I would like to discuss is the ad hoc committee for the mature trees.
I'd be more than happy to work with staff to develop that resolution and get that before council in September.
The ad hoc?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually, I was just composing an email saying I would be interested in it too, so maybe we could join forces. Talk
Two
about
of
it.
us can do that, yes.
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up on that. I know I watched the video from the last meeting, and Drake, you had mentioned the possibility of having staff present some information to the council about, what our current policies are with respect to tree management, to street trees particularly. How could that fit into that discussion of whether we have an ad hoc committee or however we might want to involve the citizens in looking at those policies?
I think if the council created an ad hoc committee, we would reserve those presentations to the ad hoc committee first to inform their recommendation to the city council. If the city council would like a report on what we currently do for road reconstruction projects, we certainly can do that. We have been over the last several months begin collecting information on tree preservation strategies and what that might look like and what costs associated with them are, what the benefits of maintaining the mature trees and what drawbacks may exist. So we have been beginning to collect that information. With the delay of Milton Street, we have some more time for an analysis of that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, it does. Thank you. Mrs. Bishop, any thoughts on recommendations for future agendas?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fields?
Nothing at this time.
Okay.
Are you okay with Mrs. Quidnow and I working on ad hoc?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. As I'm asking Drake questions, I would be interested in us thinking and discussing about, are there other ways to, do we need a committee, or, what other ways could we consider to involve the public in evaluating those policies or involve our existing committees? So maybe just something to think about as you're working on that. Be great. I would like to have sometime in the next couple of meetings a discussion on our Economic Development Commission and how we might utilize them. I think there's a number of tasks in the draft comprehensive plan where that, we could make some good use of that commission. They haven't met for a while, so I thought maybe having a discussion at the council level and thinking about what items we'd like to ask them to work on might be a good step. Also, as I mentioned, I've been attending the Joint Rock Lake Committee. They're actively working on the resolution that we adopted a couple of months ago, and at this point, they're expecting to probably present a report at our second meeting in September. I'm not sure if they'll get it done by then, but that's kind of their goal right now, so that's possibility in September. Okay, anything else, Drake, that you're aware of on the radar? Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, with that, our next agenda item is to convene into closed session to discuss city manager performance review pursuant to section 19.85(1)(c), considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. So can I get a motion to convene into closed session?
A motion to move into closed session as Ms. Curler just outlined.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, second by Mr. Fields. All in favor, please signify by raising your hands. That's 5-0. Okay, so we will be moving into closed session. We'll be going off video, and then once we complete the closed session, we will not be reconvening. We'll be adjourning after that. So that's the end of tonight's telecast. Thank you.